Live from Joe's mom's basement on the YouTube machine, it's the Stacking Benjamin Show. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug. What are the top 6 reasons that high-earning people don't get rich? Hint, their first mistake is not listening to Stacking Benjamins. Duh. Here to join the conversation is the founder of Family and Money Matters, CFP, Elaine King. Then someone whose mission it is to help you live richly regardless of income, it's Paula Pant. And finally, a guy who's here to help you straighten out those mistakes. It's our own resident CFP, OG. But that's not all. Halfway through the show, I'll share my weighty trivia question. And now, a guy who's got to be in his golden years by now, it's Joe Saul-Sehy.
Should have seen that coming, Doug. Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. So happy you're celebrating it with us. Sit back and relax because we're about to have an hour of financial fun. Doug, how are you doing this pre-weekend recording?
Lovely, Joe. Feeling just delightful at the moment. How about you?
I'm feeling fantastic. You know why I'm feeling fantastic, Doug?
I don't, Joe.
Well, it's because this episode's brought to you by State Farm. That's why.
I knew it.
If you're a small business owner, it isn't just your business, Doug. It's your life. Whatever your business might be, you want someone who understands. And that's where State Farm Small Business Insurance comes in. State Farm agents are small business owners too and help you, and know what it takes to help you personalize your policies for your small business needs. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Talk to your local agent today. Maybe I should talk to them about learning how to read that. I don't know why. Let's say hello to our friends that are here. First of all, the gentleman across the card table from me, Mr. OG, is back. How are you, my friend?
Happy day. Fantastic. Thank you for asking.
Speaking of insurances, or I think it's pronounced, Doug, it's insurances, right? Insurances.
Trying to wind me up at the beginning, aren't you?
Speaking of insurances, so if you had to use your homeowner's insurance, you guys had like 95-mile-an-hour winds?
Yeah. Thankfully not yet. Anyway, the 5 inches of rain might do us in, but so far no wind damage.
It is raining today, so an arc in the backyard.
I may not be here the rest of the day. One lightning strike away. You know.
That is true. While we were getting
Doug's
ready
like
for
promises.
today,
I was going to say, he hasn't been able to get you so far. God knows you've earned it.
Right. And the woman who is currently in Manhattan, but just partied with us in Boston, Paula Pant is here.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and you got me with that transition. I was not expecting the State Farm transition. I've been on literally hundreds of shows, and it's rare that I'm surprised.
It's something new all the time, Paula.
Something new.
Master of the segue.
Yeah, exactly.
We try to keep people guessing. Like you and I were recording an episode of Afford Anything earlier today, and you actually knew something about pop trivia, pop culture. What the hell happened there?
So you mentioned Guy Ritchie, and immediately I was like, oh, Madonna's ex-husband.
Who knew? I had no idea.
Joe was like, he had to Google it. He was like, is Guy Ritchie really Madonna? He is.
And isn't it weird that I have to second guess Paula on pop culture? Like, I don't think so.
See, the thing is, I don't watch movies, but I know gossip. I know celebrity gossip.
Perfect. Well, Guy Ritchie makes some good movies too, and TV shows. And somebody who is like, I don't know how to transition there, is like bringing the TV show of financial planning to you. That's probably horrible. Elaine King is back. How are you?
Good, thank you. I was like, bien, gracias.
Perfect. Well, you'll have to teach me all the words because we are about to head to the town. Did you grow up in Lima?
I was born in Lima.
You're born. How long did you live there?
Probably 7 years.
Okay.
Off and on.
Yeah, I can't wait because we're headed there in September. We were talking about that today before we went live.
Yeah, you should be prepared to have the best food in the world.
Well, let's talk about what you do for a second, Elaine. For the 3 people that weren't here last time when you were with us, tell us a little bit about you.
Oh, okay. So I'm a certified financial planner, and my mission in life is to make money a positive force in the world because I've seen money being so destructive and separating families that I do everything and anything I can to make sure that money makes sense to you. So behind me, I've written about 8 books on financial literacy for all kinds of people. because I really truly believe that with a good financial plan and good money sense, you can really conquer your world.
I think that's why we love having you here with us, Elaine, is because we're on board with every step of that. We're going to talk today about people that struggle with money who shouldn't, right? We have these high income earners that don't seem to be able to create wealth out of it. If that is you, or if you dream about making more money, how do we turn big money into actual wealth? We're going to have that in just a second. But first, if you want to help out the show, you know how you do it. You help out the sponsors who help the show, who make it free for you. And after our trivia question today, the rest of the episode, the second half of the show is always sponsor free. So please help us help you by helping the sponsor. Does that make any? I don't know if that makes sense, but let's go. I don't know if that does make sense. I don't know. What the hell did I just say? I've been tripping over that every recording today.
That works. That works. Help us help you by helping
Help
sponsors.
us.
Yeah, that
help
makes
me
sense.
help you. Right.
Help me
All
help
right.
you by helping me.
Here we go. 3, 2, 1. All right, we got OG here. We have Elaine here. We got Paula, neighbor Doug. Let's get rolling. Our piece today that is inspiring this conversation comes to us from the blog Banker on Fire. This is a classic one. It came out a couple of years ago, but you know what? We didn't look at it then, and we were flipping through Banker on Fire, and I really like this piece. 6 reasons why high earners don't get rich. Now, stackers, you don't have to have it in front of you, but if you want it in front of you, just go to our show notes page at stackingbenjamins.com and you can follow along there. But like I said, no reason to do that. I think for today, I want to start where Banker on Fire starts, guys, which is he talks about the story of this gentleman, Rick Fusconi? Rick, anybody? A graduate of both Dartmouth and University of Chicago, he went on to have a storied career in international finance. Over the course of 21 years, he rose to become the global head of fixed income at Merrill Lynch, accumulating a multi-million-dollar fortune along the way, retiring in his 40s to become a philanthropist. But he got in over his head when that global financial crisis hit 2007, 2008. 2 years after that, he filed for a spectacular bankruptcy just to keep a roof over his head. And he then dives into how would this person lose all of their money? Why is somebody who's so blessed with this huge opportunity and clearly bringing in a lot, how do they end up filing for bankruptcy? Let's start, Elaine, with you as our guest. When you work with people, do you see this often? Somebody that's a high income earner should have stacked tons and tons of Benjamins behind them and just is struggling to make that happen?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because there's really no, you know this better than me. There's no instructions on what you should do with your money. So I had a client once, I'll tell you, it's kind of funny. He made $1 million a year. And I told him, how much do you save? And he said, I don't know. And I said, do you have your tax return? And he said, yes. And I said, so anything that is not there, then you spend? Like if it says $1 million, that's what you spend. And he said, yeah, basically. So a lot of people are not taught to save, but most importantly, the fact that you should have at least a multiple of what you make. So if somebody makes $1 million, they should have at least like 3, 4, 5, 6 times your earnings if you're in your 40s or your 50s. And people don't think about that because that's a lot of money. But if you start saving a little bit earlier, you will have a multiple of it. So I see that all the time. People that make 300,000, 200,000, and they have $100,000 saved. That's not enough.
Yeah, in their 50s, in their late 40s, and haven't done any of that. You know, it's funny, Paula. Elaine talks about there's no instructions. I also feel like, and you know, I watch your Instagrams, but while I'm flipping through Paula's responsible Instagrams, I see what you see, which is I feel like TikTok, Instagram culture is not about what Elaine's talking about. No, there are no instructions. I feel like the instructions we get often are emphasizing something completely different.
Yeah, that's why curating your information diet is so important. In the same way that you curate your food diet, you curate what goes into your mouth because some things are junk food and some things are more nutritious, which is just another way of saying some things will make you healthier or are likely to make you healthier, and some things are likely to make you less healthy. The same is true for what we let into our brain. And so curating that and being very selective about what we allow into our brain space is a major piece of making sure that we calibrate our mindset to healthy thinking.
Oh, gee, when Doug and I were in Detroit at our meetup a couple weeks ago, were you there, Doug, when one of the people said we were talking about what was kind of the thing that helped you get good with money? And the first person who raised their hand said bankruptcy, which I did not expect. I did not expect somebody to say bankruptcy, but he said before that he had, to Paula's point about, about not having curated stuff. Oh, gee, he had the wrong stuff he was following. He had a bunch of toys. He didn't care about any of it. And when he went bankrupt, luckily he was young enough that it was the slap across the face he needed to get his life together. And he said now he's been able to retire. He's been able to do the things that he wanted to because of that brutal slap. But we don't want people to go through what this stacker went through or what Rick Fuscone in this piece went through. How do we get kind of that wake up call ahead of time that, hey, just because I make a lot of money doesn't mean I'm guaranteed wealth?
Well, also let's be sure or be clear here. Rick's bankruptcy that they talk about was on his $14 million house, and had 2 swimming pools, and that came on the heels of him selling his $5 million house in Palm Beach. So, he could have downsized just a skosh, probably, saved a little bit, just a little bit, maybe try to find a $7 million house instead of a 15 million. I don't know. Just call me crazy. The interesting thing when people think about, and looking through this article, he doesn't really talk about this in there, but when people talk about how much money they make, it's always in the sense of like gross income, top line revenue. Like I make $200,000 a year. My salary is $325, or whatever. And we converse like that, but we never think about how much money we actually keep after even just payroll taxes, which sometimes, as Joe, you and I both know, and maybe anybody else here listening would know as well, sometimes the payroll tax people don't really line up with what the income tax people want, and then you owe a little bit more. But payroll taxes, health insurance, the normal stuff that comes out of your paycheck, there's a big decline that comes right out of there, right at the beginning, or a big withdrawal, I should say. And yet we think, and we use these words, and when we have this language of I make this money, your brain will believe it. Like the mental power of your basic self-affirmation over and over and over again of I make 250 grand, I make 250 grand, I make 250 grand. And then how that turns into your livelihood around that would be so much different if instead of saying that, you said, I keep 150,000. I keep 150,000. I keep like your whole life would change just by using the right vocabulary around what your income is and how that affects your, how you think about things. It's very bizarre how we quote things in gross income or business revenue or whatever, and not in like, this is how much I, oh, my business does 2 million. Like, cool. But how much do you make? 32,000. It's like,
yeah, right.
It's a big difference.
I remember we were talking to Chad Carson about that, about people that have this incredibly huge real estate empire. It takes them forever to manage it. And they're bringing in the same amount of money as somebody who had a much smaller real estate empire and just made sure that every deal lined up better. And so they were able to have more free time. Just because you have a bigger, just because you have more stuff around you does not mean that you're full of life. And I'm wondering, because that is what OG's talking about, Elaine, is number one on this list. He says, you aren't making that much money. He says 300,000 or 500,000 might sound punchy, but in reality, it's far from being an obscene amount of money that will make you rich. And I love what OG's saying. We get addicted to this top line, right? And people think about this all the time. What do we do to not be so addicted to that? I mean, is this much more paying attention to net income, is about having the right tools, the right spreadsheets, about actually I don't know, having a budget. Where do we begin to divorce ourselves from this idea that I make 500,000 when that's nowhere near the amount you are actually keeping?
Well, I think you have to think about your life plan in terms of proportions, because a lot of people, when they make money, I mean, if you're listening and you're experiencing, you're going to get a bonus, that doesn't mean you have to spend it, right? Your lifestyle doesn't have to go up. So if you have a plan and you can have a proportion always of savings, whether you make $10,000, $100,000, or $1 million, you're always going to be saving 20% and growing it. So I like what OJ was saying. It's not what you make, it's what you get to keep. Because if your lifestyle is 99% of your income, then you get to save 1%. You have to always aim that your lifestyle is 80% of your income. Live below your means. And that's when you get to really enjoy, when you get older, of everything that you want to do. So I think it's a formula. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm a mathematical person, but I think it's a formula. And whether you're small in numbers or big in numbers, that proportion has to stay. I don't know if you guys agree on that.
Yeah. Well, I want to draw attention to one number that you said. You mentioned 20%, save 20%. For people just starting out, is that a good number to strive for?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Especially because you go from student, college, eating Chef Boyardee or ramen, whatever, to, having to rent and buying your first car. You don't have to go all the way high. You just go gradually.
Paula, you like that 20% number to start out?
I say whatever amount you are currently saving, next month, save 1% more.
Oh.
And then the following month, save 1% more than that. And then the month after that, save 1% more than that. And if you just do that month after month after month,
soon you'll be at 110%.
I was going to say,
Exactly.
in 8 years.
Save more than what you made.
And then I got into credit card debt. How did that happen? I was funding my 110%. I had to get into credit card debt to get there. Yeah. OG, do you like that 20% number as a starting point?
I mean, I think that I don't have any idea what the average person saves. I mean, I think technically the average person saves negative money. Yeah. So probably anything 7 is 7 the average number, Elaine? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. I mean, any number is better than 0. And like Paula said, if you can add a little bit to it and compound it, if you're just starting out, it doesn't really matter what the number is that you start out at. It's a combination of all of these things put together. It's like, so you get out, you're in school and now you get your first job and it's like, oh, I got my first job. I make $100,000. No, you don't. You probably take home 70, which means, after taxes and health insurance and all that other sort of stuff. Now you have to pay taxes. So now you probably make 60, or I'm sorry, after you do some savings, you probably can live on 50, make 100, taxes are 20, savings are another 10, and now you're really living on 50. And yet so much would go to the bank and say, I want to buy a house. And they go, cool, how much money do you make? I make $100,000. Oh, you get to buy this size of house. It's like, it's insane how all of this stuff. And then so you start out behind from day one. But if that's where you are, it's totally fine. Start saving some money and get your lifestyle in check. You don't have to, just because you got a pay raise, you don't have to buy another car. You can stay where you are. You don't have to move, buy a different house. You can, you can keep your lifestyle at whatever level it's at for a period of time. You just have to freeze it to get back on the other side of that curve. You think about it like a graph using, Elaine's example of mathematics. Like you just have to get on the other side of that curve and then go ahead, increase your lifestyle. Once you're saving 10, 15, 20%, then every time you get a pay raise, have fun, go on vacation, do your thing, as long as you stay on that side of the equation.
I love that idea of a freeze, because I love that, the connotation then is you're going to pay attention month by month by month to make sure, that you lock it down.
Yeah. And it's not a life sentence. I think a lot of people, when getting credit card debt or, some money issue happens, like, oh my God, I can never go on vacation. It's like, no, you just can't go right now. It's not never, just don't go now. Just wait 6 months for God's sake. It'll still be there probably.
maybe it's
Jeez, Dad,
maybe
calm
it's-
down.
or maybe it's
Settle
camping
down.
maybe it's camping in the backyard instead of
Yes.
OJ, where do
Yeah.
you want to go on vacation?
Where do I want to go on vacation? I don't really. I don't.
This
I
is a
don't
slippery
really go
slope.
Places. Yeah. Yeah. No. Probably things. Yeah. Things we don't really probably talk about. Right now, I have
Another
a kid that's
episode.
about to go to college, and another kid that's going to go to college in 2 years, and an 8-year-old daughter who knows what Louis Vuitton is. So there's basically no vacations in my life.
And Sephora.
Okay, she's not on that yet, thank God. But
That's the next step,
she's in
Elaine.
sports, and I know that's the next level. So no
Wow.
vacations for OG. It's just slaving away in the basement next to Doug.
But I
You
love
can
that.
come to Miami to visit.
Perfect.
I
Well,
do love Miami.
that is one of OG's. You're
It's-
speaking his language, Elaine.
It is my favorite
$100,000 cars. Everybody got them.
Yeah, I do love.
Yeah.
I love the idea of freeze. The OG that you mentioned, Elaine. I love the high number. You know, some people in the fire movement are like 20%. How cute! But for the average American out there, 20% is a big number. And if we could get everybody to that, I mean, how great would we be? So I love that as an aspirational number. And Paula, I like this idea of challenges.
Mhm.
You know, I like challenging ourselves. You know, we as part of our stacked book club, we each did a spending or saving challenge. Everybody picked one, and Cheryl and I decided to eat all the food in our freezer before we went out and bought any of the main courses, and it took us forever. It took us so long to get through it, and what food waste we would have had we not do that. So I love all three of these. Paul, I want to stick with you for a second, because number 2 on this piece is you spend money before you make it. You spend it ahead of time. I remember NFL player Philip Buchanan we had on a few years ago, and talked about when he got drafted, he was already over $1 million in debt because he spent all of his bonus money, all of his first year signings on stupid crap before he started. But Paul, as you know, you don't got to be an NFL football player to make that mistake.
Yeah, it's very easy if you anticipate getting a big payout. You anticipate a large commission check, a big holiday bonus, a big promotion. Even if transitioning from being a college student into getting your first job, great. I've just gone from having near zero income to having any income at all, right? And it can be very easy because you're anticipating moving up to the next bracket to start spending accordingly.
The first thing I saw when I graduated, you know, many hundreds of years ago, but I'm sure it's still the same thing today. When people got their first job out of college, you know, Paula, how they celebrate. The average person I saw went and bought a brand new car because, quote, I deserve it, right? I have my first job, and they didn't have any money yet, but they had the first paycheck or the letter from their new employer that they could go buy this car, and were very proud of the fact that they were now in debt up to their eyeballs before the job even began.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's that anticipatory spending. I think sometimes it comes from a place of you've felt a sense of scarcity for a very long time.
Mhm.
And so the idea of being, 5 feet away from that finish line can drive some of that anticipatory spending. And so I think a mental reframing, and this is of course easier said than done, but embracing some type of a mental reframing in which rather than feeling scarcity, you feel a sense of enoughness with where you currently are. I think that's one of the best ways to head off the anticipatory spending without feeling like you're needing to exercise discipline in order to do so.
I think enoughness is our kick-ass new word of the day. Enoughness.
Aw, thank you.
That
I
is.
was
It's
going to
an-
go
it's
with
enoughness of a word.
anticipatory. Honestly.
Right. I was still focused on how many syllables in anticipatory. Ran out of fingers.
It's a
Oh,
lot
gee,
of
it's
vowels.
anticipatoriness. I don't know. Yeah, good example of this. It was close to home. Was that Doug knew that it was bonus time happening in the basement? You remember this, Doug? And so Doug went and he got all the designs done for a new pool behind his house. And then it turned out his employers gave him Jelly of the Month Club, and he wasn't very
And
happy
the
with
religious candles.
And then and then cousin Eddie had to help him. Oh wait, that might be a movie.
But again, thinking about what Paula just said here, this is all about the mindset. This is all about your brain playing tricks on you, because again, you cannot tell a lie to yourself. You just can't do it. Your brain is set up in a way that you are the most trustworthy person that you know. And so like if you're trying to lose weight and you're like, how come I can't do it? And you go, well, it's because you're fat and you're ugly, that really that gets to you, right? And so the same thing is true with money. If you're like, oh, I'm going to make this money, or I got this big bonus coming, your brain has already consumed it. That's why having a spending plan, people use the word budget, but if you set up at the beginning of the month and like list out all of your expenses and like where all the money's going to get spent, where your income is, I get paid on this Friday, the money goes to my bank account, like literally kind of timeline it out, your brain will not be able to find additional spending throughout the month, because as long as you zeroed out your budget throughout the month in advance of the month happening. So, you're in June, so due July's now, you will not have the opportunity to spend money because your brain already knows the answer to the math problem. Your brain already goes, nope, there's no money at the end of this month. We've already done this. We've already solved this problem. I don't have to dedicate any energy to this.
Let's talk
very, very, very interesting.
Well, let's talk tactics for a second, OG, because I love that tactic. But this is why so many people, I think, are devotees of YNAB then, right? Because that software does exactly that.
Well, yes. And I don't know if YNAB does it in advance or in arrears. I don't know if it's like a record keeping.
No, you give every dollar has a job before you earn it. You take it, you allocate it.
Yeah. So there you go.
This is my grocery money. This is my car payment money, to go back to that. This is the money I'm saving. Every dollar has a job. So before you earn it, it's already spent in a responsible way.
Yeah. 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 It's the exact same thing. I do it on paper and pencil. So, when it's time to kind of clean it up a little bit, that's such an effective tool, because again, your brain can't tell the difference between vivid imagination and reality. And this is so true. The only way I can prove it to you is every one of us has had a dream that you've woken up from and gone, dude, that was so real, because your brain doesn't know that it was fake. And, or you wake up and you're angry at your partner and you can't figure out why. It's just because you had a dream that they peed you off, right? It's like, oh, this is a dream. Why am I so hanging on to that? It was make believe, but your brain doesn't know the difference. Do the same tricks with money. A lot of this is just setting yourself up for success amidst all the opportunities to fail. It's just like, just put yourself in a position to trick yourself in advance. What really the success criteria.
Well, when I was making these mistakes, Elaine, what I had to do was go to an all cash lifestyle. I just had to make sure that I could only spend money that I had. I did make it impossible for myself to spend the money before I made it. I just had to take all that away. And if I would have done the YNAB-ish thing, the planning out the budget that OG's talking about, I would have gotten ahead even quicker. Are there any other tactics that you use with clients or have used in your own life to help people make the switch?
Yeah. So what I do with clients sometimes, and this is something that may be new to some that are listening, is that money, yes, was made to spend and to exchange for goods. That's historical. But also in this new modern life that we're living, we can spend money on assets. And I think the key to becoming wealthy, besides, being financially healthy, is to accumulate assets that generate money for you in the future. So, for example, what Paula was talking about, the car, if the car is going to take you from point A and B to generate more income, then it could be potentially be seen as an asset. But if it's just your second car that's not going to generate any income, then it's just a expenditure. If you're going to add another bathroom to your home, then it's a capital expenditure, which means it's an asset. Your home is going to be worth more, and therefore you can rent it in the future for more. So I think for those who are starting up, they should divide their budget into things that you need absolutely to keep your home, your lights on, but also at the bottom of your budget, you should add capital expenditures, things that you want to spend, I don't know, maybe build a business, create some passive income, buy a piece of land. Maybe you don't have enough money to buy another home, but buy a piece of land that in the future you can rent out. So when in Spanish is cuando las vacas están flacas, when the cows are skinny, maybe you're cash poor sometimes, but you are asset rich, and you can make that asset create more income for you. You see what I'm saying? I'm sure you see what I'm saying.
It's a great way. It's a great way to think about it. And Paula, I saw you give some big head nod when Elaine said buy assets.
I was liking when the cows are skinny. What a beautiful visual metaphor, right? Yeah. But I absolutely agree. Assets. So I think it's a two-step process. When you're at the beginning of your journey, if you're in your 20s, or if you're
is that when the cows are skinny, when you're in your 20s?
For most people, yes. I mean,
yes.
For most people, yes. When you're in your 20s, unless you're Justin Bieber, you probably haven't made big money yet. And so at that stage, investing in human capital, investing in your skills and your ability to earn money is one of the best investments that you can make. But after you do that, once you have some type of decently or highly compensated skill and you're making good money, then it's a matter of accumulating assets. So I think there's a switch that happens when you move from skill acquisition, and I mean, and obviously lifelong learning is important, but when your primary focus is skill acquisition versus when your primary focus is asset acquisition.
But the skill acquisition, I think early on, so important to think is this putting more stuff in my corner to fatten up the cows? I'm just trying to keep it going.
Yeah. Or planting grass. Yeah,
that's right. Coming up in the second half of this discussion, we're going to talk about people moving around geographically for new opportunities. Banker on Fire does not like that one. And then also, you don't make the effort to manage your money. Just a couple more that we're going to dive into, maybe doing a better job on and give you some tactics to do better in those areas. But at the halfway point of every Friday show, we take our three contributors to this show, Paula, OG, and my mom, who never wants to play for herself. So Elaine King, you're playing on behalf of my mom today. Okay. It's a year-long competition. And Elaine, we've got some good news and some bad news about you playing for mom.
Uh-oh.
Would you like the good news or the bad news?
The bad news first.
The bad news is you are in second place. You're tied for second with 5. So you're not winning. That's the bad news. But the good news is you will be guessing second because, and I can't believe I'm saying this, Paula Pant is winning so far this year. This never happens. What is going on? Paula has 6. Mom has 5. And OG gets to guess. When Doug is the last time that OG got to guess last?
It has happened before, but it's usually a momentary aberration. It's a little dip in the market, and he comes roaring back. This has been a sustained, depressed period for him.
I won
last week.
Well, he won last week, so. But it was depressing that you won last week, OG. We need a trivia question though, and Doug, you provide those. So let's see what our question is this fine Friday.
Hey there, Stackers. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug. Since Elaine King is on the show today, I thought it'd be a great excuse to talk about her home country of Peru. And more importantly, Peru's Lake Titicaca. It's like a Boy Scout troop went on a camping trip and got a merit badge for lake naming. I can't wait to visit one day and see what inspired that name. Is it the first part, the titty part, or the caca part? I don't know. I don't even really care. Believe it or not, Lake Titicaca isn't even the best thing about Peru. First off, Peruvians celebrate New Year's by gifting each other yellow underwear for good luck. I've always been a fan of that tradition. So I tried giving Joe's mom some of my underwear as a gift one year. Looking back, she must have had something against the people of Peru because she was not happy about the yellow ones. Hey, maybe she was hoping I gave her red ones? I don't know. She's hard to figure out sometimes. In addition to sexy lakes and traditions, Peru is also the 7th largest producer of gold in the world. As of this year, they have over 100 gold mines in operation. That's enough to keep Mr. T accessorized for a lifetime. Am I right? Today's trivia question is, how many metric tons of gold did Peru produce in 2022? I'll be back right after I see if there's any lakes around here that haven't been named yet. I got a couple ideas.
I bet you do, Doug. I bet you do. Had you heard of that tradition, Elaine? You know that tradition, giving people underwear?
I heard of the tradition, not giving it to others, but I heard of it. Yellow, right?
Yeah, yellow. Yeah. So interesting. And I can't wait to go. Let's what's it? No, not about the underwear. That came out
If for no other reason than the free underwear.
I am currently running out of yellow underwear.
Party underwear is yellow. We know that.
Yellow underwear when you go to Peru. Otherwise, you're going to be stopped in customs.
I hear the beeping sound as I'm trying to back away from that statement. Let's get on with this then. So, Paula, you have to guess first. How many metric tons of gold did Peru produce in 2022?
Oh man. Okay, so I have to think in terms of the metric system. I'm just gonna kind of randomly throw out numbers. Let's see. Searching my ingredient label for some number inspiration. Ooh, okay. All right. So this can of Waterloo was manufactured in Austin, Texas, and the zip code of the manufacturing plant.
This is awesome.
If you multiply by 5.
The zip code of the manufacturing plant is 78702. So I'm going to say 78,702.
78,702 metric tons.
Metric tons.
78,702. Elaine, you think that's high or low?
No, I don't have an idea. Let me look at my okay, 70,000 metric tons. Well, I guess I could say 100,000, and then OJ can go lower, and then we'll see who wins.
All right, 100,000 metric tons. We got 70,000 ish, 100,000 on the dot. OG, what are you thinking? Metric tons of gold.
So I think that a metric ton is very close to a ton, which is 2,000 pounds. And I remember reading somewhere that all the gold ever mined in the history of mankind would basically fill up one Olympic swimming pool. So I don't know how deep an Olympic swimming pool is, but it's pretty deep, I think. But there's not a lot. So 2,000 pounds of gold is a lot of gold, like in terms of dollars and that sort of thing. So I think the number is very small, because it's times 2,000. So the answer is in metric tons. Yes.
Yes.
Not in like pounds or anything like that. It's something metric tons.
Metric tons.
The numbers are 78,000 and some change, and 100,000. It's way less than 78,000. Only because I can do it. I'm going to say everything under Paula, but I think the real number is like 100 or
10.
75 or I
or
think
10,
it's it's some single digit, double digit, maybe triple digit number, but I'm going to say officially everything underneath of Paula.
All right. We will see who's right on this one. Is Paula going to pull further ahead? Elaine going to help Mom make this happen?
Mom. I'm so sorry.
Is OG going to move up? We'll see in just a minute. We'll be right back. All right. Say hi to everybody who's hanging out with us for just a moment. We've got a Darren here with us, Earl's neighbor Darren from Peru. I asked people where they're from, or from Peoria, because I was talking about and I got a nice note, by the way, from somebody from Peoria. You know how I always use Earl in Peoria who can't zip up his own pants, and Earl's like this idiot. I had this very nice woman from Peoria who wrote to me and said, people from Peoria are really nice. Like, not talking about you. I'm talking about just Earl. But very nice. Glad you're here with us. And E. Boone is here. Karen is here. 60-mile-per-hour winds in Montana last week.
Wow.
Leonidas reviews. Annette is here. Hey, Annette. Anyway, 8 years, E. Boone, 8 years on YNAB, using YNAB. All right. Glad you guys are here hanging out with us. It looks like we've got lots more people here that are just a little shy. Okay. Let's dive into the second half of the show. 3, 2, 1. Elaine, you kick this. No, wait a minute. Paula kicked this off. See, I can't even get this right.
Can't even get yourself to say it.
I know, Paula, you kicked this off with something in the 78,000-ish metric tons. How you feeling? Pretty good?
I mean, I literally picked up a can of Waterloo sparkling water, read the zip code off of the back, and that was my guess. So no, not feeling great. I think OG is right.
Are you cheating on our water brand, Paula?
I know, right? So Spindrift is the normal water brand. But,
I know.
It's got to drink
Waterloo's
the
better.
competition.
Waterloo's absolutely my favorite. And I know that's controversial.
Are we
love it.
starting a Waterloo versus Spindrift?
Oh, he's got Waterloo as well.
OG's going La Croix. But I like Waterloo. It's just a touch more flavor in
Gee,
there.
I didn't know you
Just
loved
have
the
a tea.
French.
I know that.
I'm from Detroit.
I think
Waterloo.
100
There's a lot of
tons.
things about me, Paula.
I think it's 100 tons.
Well, so you're not feeling good about your answer early.
No, I said it in meters. I guess I had to convert it into tons.
Yep. Well, we will see who's so. Gee, you must be feeling confident then. If both Elaine and Paula think you're right.
Well, I just think 78,000 times 2,000 is such an incomprehensible number. No one could even. There's no one in this planet who could figure that math out. So, it's
Doug
just such
has.
a big number.
I'm sure Doug has. Yes.
No,
Doug, haven't you?
I've begged him not to.
Yeah.
All right.
Begged
Oh, no,
him
he's going to
repeatedly
get all
not
of the
to do
math
this part.
because OG loves all of the math.
I hate the math part. It's so annoying.
Doug.
Carry on, Doug.
Oh, yeah.
Doug, who's right
How did
here?
it go?
Is OG taking this out?
Hey there, stackers. I'm gold digger and thoughtful gift giver, Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug. Gold has been a valuable metal to humans for thousands of years, with the first uses of the metal dating back to 4000 BC. It must have been a trip to be the first person to have found it. 1 minute, you're panning for who knows what, and the next thing you know, you discover gold. Look, everyone, look over there. Lou discovered gold. Today's trivia question is, how many metric tons of gold did Purdue, the university, and Peru, the country, produce in 2022?
Combined.
Purdue's pretty technical. They probably got it in a lab somewhere. They're figured out how to make it. The answer, while gold is Peru's most valuable export, they also export shit tons of copper and zinc. Now, I'm not sure the exact conversion rate between a shit ton and a metric ton. I mean, seriously, though, does anybody even like the metric system? It totally sucks. But good thing I have the shit ton app on my phone. Let me just see here, a couple of beep, 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 bop, boop. And, it just says it's a lot. Anyway, overall, the country's mining sector accounts for 8.3% of the country's roughly $240 billion GDP. Elaine's learning so much about her own country. She's nodding her head like, oh, yeah, I knew that. So how many shit tons were there? Roughly 62.825 shit tons, which means, well, I'm not going to do the conversion for you yet. What I will tell you is that Paula guessed Austin, Texas. Like, it's not even a number, Paula. But if we use Austin's zip code, she was over by 78,576.3 metric shit tons. Elaine was over by 99,000 and a bunch more. OG coming in just under Paula. He was over by 78,576.3 because in 2022, Purdue and Peru produced 125.7 metric tons of gold, meaning on a 2-week streak, OG is our winner. Bet you liked the math that time because you were the winner.
And he thought it was around 100, right? So not bad.
125.
Man,
Nice.
I should have taken that zip code and put a decimal point in there. I should have been like, you know what? I bet it's 78.702.
Bam. Would have
Yeah,
Just
anchored
one
it lower in
neighborhood of
everybody.
Austin.
The problem, Paula, was your version of commas and decimal point. You're using the American, the European or metric version of doing it. I don't
That's
We
it.
had to convert it.
yeah,
And you would have been
exactly.
fine. You-
Exactly.
We're like
it's-
meters, not
the
tons.
comma is really a
Yes.
period. Yes.
Burn by the meter
the-
Oh,
too.
well, better luck next week.
And by the way, stackers, if you want to hear Doug swearing without all the beep outs that we did, just come hang out live with us on YouTube. You just got
You're
right
beeping
there.
all of that?
all the way through our show. Yes, absolutely. You know what we're not going to be about? We're not going to be about the second half of this discussion, which is brought to you by depositaccounts.com. Elaine, you know what happens when you go to depositaccounts.com?
No, what?
Perfect. You find out that brick and mortar bank where you might be keeping your savings account might not be giving you the interest you deserve. You can compare more than 275,000 deposit rates from over 11,000 banks and credit unions for free at deposit accounts from Lending Tree. As we record this, listen to this. The national average savings account is 0.52. So it's popped up over 0.5%. But if you're in one of the hundreds of banks that is in the top 1%, 4.97, getting close to 5% on savings accounts. You know how I know that? I just went to depositaccounts.com. So, and you can too. All right, let's dive into another piece of this, which is this idea of moving around. And you know what, OG, let's start with you, because we hear all the time that people, you got to move around to make jobs. The average person has 7 different companies or more that they work for during their career. That number's up significantly over 15 years ago. And yet, because there's so much cost around moving, that it makes it more difficult to stay wealthy. Are you on board with that?
Well, I mean, I guess all of those things are somewhat fact dependent. I know it does cost a lot of money to move. We moved 10 years ago, and it was 10 grand, just about, excluding the cost of selling our house and the cost of deposit on a new apartment and like all of that, sunk costs of the move. But the actual capital cost to move was, about 10K. That number undoubtedly is 3x now. So if you don't have a company that's providing you relocation benefits, then you got to kind of factor that into your decision. Not to mention, the new cost of living and tax situation and whatever's going on in the new place that you're moving to, right? If you move from a lower cost living area to a higher cost living area, and all you're doing is looking at that salary increase, like, oh, I'm moving from, wherever Midwest to San Francisco, and my gosh, my salary went from 70 grand to 110. It's like, that probably is not enough to offset the cost of the move plus the extra taxes and insurance costs and cost of living to move to a really high cost of living area. That doesn't mean that it's not a good idea, because that could change the career trajectory you have, or there could be some other networking opportunities in your specialty in that area, which helps. But I think you have to put all those things into the blender to kind of figure out if it's really a good thing. You can't just move because job B is going to pay you $25,000 more than job A does. There's a lot of extra pieces there.
Paul, I want to go to you next, because you're somebody that made a move and not downstream, like people moving from high cost of living to low cost living areas, right? Now that we can commute literally to another room in our house and work from a lot of us can work from home, so we can live in a lower cost living area. You actually went to a higher cost of living area. So for you, looking at what Mr. Banker on Fire is talking about here, you're doing things exactly, making it more difficult on yourself, I would think.
Yeah, well, so a couple of things. One, yeah, I decided to move to a higher cost of living area because I'm a believer. I have become over the years a believer in the philosophy of let the heart lead and the mind execute. When I was younger, I would let the mind lead, And when I let my mind lead, I did things that were rational and made sense on paper, but that made me very unhappy. I'm not very unhappy. That's maybe a stretch, but that
Yeah.
made me, dissatisfied enough. And um, and what I eventually came to realize is that I should live in the place that I want to live in, even if it doesn't make sense on paper, and then let the mind execute the most optimal way to do that, but don't give up living in the place that you actually want to live in, right? Um, so if what you really want is to live in a high cost city, if there's a particular city that you just love, live there. Now, to what Banker on Fire wrote, he made two points that I want to discuss. First, he talked about the fact that often if you move, you sell your home, and by virtue of selling your home, you don't get to build a lot of equity because you're always in the first couple of years of the amortization schedule. You have very little principal payoff, then you sell, you don't have a ton of home equity. On top of that, there are huge transaction costs associated with selling that home. That can be remedied if you're willing to be what's known as an accidental landlord, meaning you just hold on to that home. Maybe you're a renter in the new environment for a while you're saving up for the next down payment, but you hold on to that home and turn it into a rental property. Now, not everybody wants to do that, but if you're willing to do that, and if you can get enough rent that it at least covers your costs and is at a minimum cash flow neutral or mildly positive, that's a great way to continue to build that equity. The other point that Banker on Fire makes, though, is that if you move frequently for your work, it means that your spouse has to compromise their career in order to accommodate your move. And it means you know, that could adversely impact your spouse's earning potential, like their income potential, their trajectory up the career ladder, or potentially their ability to even work at all. And I think that's a really important point, and probably something that's a point that's not talked about often enough. The age of remote work is helping that a little bit, but that's very, even to the extent that remote work is helping that, that's very industry specific.
I agree with something that Professor Scott Galloway talks about when choosing to move upstream to a place like where you move, Paula, to Manhattan, which is, proximity, even in the age of the internet, truly does matter. And being in a community locally of people that are like-minded people moving in the same direction. I mean, there was a reason why in Paris, back at the time of Hemingway, like all these great writers, F. Scott Fitzgerald, they're all there together, right? Gertrude Stein, they're all creating stuff, the proximity. And I totally agree with him that proximity is everything. And while the cost of living might be more difficult, that being in a place where great people are doing great work and being a piece of that movement is also great. Elaine, though, there was also one more point Paula didn't point to, and I was glad you didn't steal this thunder, Paula, because there's another one. And Elaine, I love coming to you for this because your practice is in Miami, but also in Peru. And Banker on Fire talks about if you're going to move internationally, you might be giving up government benefits, and that your government benefit numbers might be much smaller. Do you have to counsel people on that and maybe say, hey, maybe you want to stay a little longer in X country to accumulate benefits in that country before you make the big move?
There are certain situations, and there's some tax havens that you can have corporations. But what I wanted to mention is that I agree with Paula in the sense of moving up in a place you like, but also with purpose. I lived in Manhattan for 4 years, but my purpose there was to start my career in Wall Street. And then I moved to a smaller city, Miami, because I knew that was going to be the future of Latin America banking and financial industry. So I think leading with your differentiating factor and with your purpose. I mean, I always knew that I wanted to live around water. I love water. I can't stand not being around water. I lived next to the river when I was in Manhattan. Now I live in an island, sort of. So I think purpose, not to, and agreeing with Paul in the sense that don't let the tail wag the dog, because if you have purpose and you have energy and motivation, you're going to make it work. So the same thing with taxes. So don't just, I have a client that, saving $20,000 on taxes and staying miserable in a city doesn't make any sense if you can make it, 10 times more if you move faster. So having financial well-being is more important than having financial accumulation. Being in a place that makes you happy and that you can thrive and grow makes more sense than letting the taxes and money drive your destination. I come from, my dad was an expat. So we always moved places every 2 years because of a better opportunity. So I associate moving with better opportunities, more income, more benefits. So I think that should be the mindset should be you're moving to do something better and become something better, as opposed to you're moving, for a worse position. I mean, why would you even do that? It doesn't make any sense. So I think you should definitely consult one of us before you decide to move. We would love to throw it in Excel. I'm working hard on learning Python. So one day I can, do it faster. But, and the cost of living, there's so much stuff that you have to consider before moving, but definitely go with your purpose. If you like water or if you like mountains, go there. It's going to make you happier, and therefore you're going to thrive and grow
I'm
your assets.
a big fan, Elaine, of water too. Like my body literally craves it. Like if I didn't get water, I think I'd totally die.
Yeah.
No? Is this on?
I recommend Waterloo, made in Austin, Texas. Zip code 78702.
For all your water needs. Yes.
I thought it was State Farm, not Waterloo.
Waterloo, if you want to sponsor the show too, we already see how great we are at this. We're amazing at this. Last thing I want to talk about here is that, a lot of people with high income think that they don't need to spend a lot of time managing their money. There's always a lot more coming in. And OG, on one hand, you and I talk about this a lot, right? The one side of the equation that people don't give enough thought to is making more money. And yet Banker on Fire says, maybe if you spend some more time managing that money you made, you'd keep some.
Well, I mean, there's so many components to, the concept of money, and it's not just the earning capabilities of it. It's not just your top line, like we talked about a little bit earlier. It's the structure of your pay. It's the type of compensation that you receive. And all of these different things all end up with different taxation, all the different ways that you can defer the taxation in terms of savings. And then, all the little tactical things. He gives an example of selling stock at a loss and then repurchasing it in his other account. That all sounds good on paper, but then there's rules around that too, in terms of how long you have to wait and so on and so forth. And there does get to be a point in time, I think it's like, what is that called? Like an inverse bell curve? I don't know the name of it. Parabola? Is that what that is? Is it a parabola? No, it's not a parabola.
It's a U shape.
Marble?
I don't know. Anyways, there's like when you're getting started with money, you need lots of help. And then you get things going, I think, and like things are going good and life is good and, everything's kind of on autopilot. And then stuff can get more complicated than on the back end, whether it's just in terms of volume of money you have or tax issues or just simply you don't want to deal with it because your highest and best use of time is to go produce a result for your company or for, your organization. And it's just better to devote your time and energy to that and have someone else handle these other things for you. So there's lots of opportunity there to be more efficient. I did think it was funny where he talked about how he could never understand how finance people could screw up their money. Right. And it's like, well, have you ever seen a fat doctor? Like, doctors used to smoke like in the room with you. Like, hey, what do you think's wrong? You're like, well, I can narrow down a few things, doc. Got an upper respiratory issue. Have you tried cigarettes? No, not recently. So, so it happens, but this is true with a lot of things in life. Just because I know how to change electrical outlets doesn't mean that I should be changing an electrical outlet, right? There's a risk associated with that. So um, doing nothing is generally an awful strategy.
Well, there, Paula, is a, I mean, there's a side conversation to what OG's talking about, which is it spending more time optimizing if it is the right time for that, or is it better systems?
Ooh. What I mean, perhaps optimizing comes from system improvement.
All the above.
Yeah, yeah.
Both.
Well, yeah, and perhaps those two are one and the same.
I just feel like sometimes people are like, well, I got to devote more time to this. And I think that might be a lie. You know what I mean? Maybe more time setting up, a better mousetrap.
I think that, you know, to a certain extent, you can't cut back hours any further. And I think if you're in a mode where you are really trying to elevate to the next level, it just requires a lot of hours sometimes. It does. But how you spend those hours, do you set up the systems? Do you bring in the talent? Um, Makes a big difference.
Yeah. Elaine?
Oh, yeah, I wanted to backtrack a little on the first question you asked an hour ago. I'm just kidding. The last one. The last one on taxes.
Yes.
Yes.
Bring it.
Okay. Okay. So there's something called FATCA, which is a treaty that the U.S. has with most of the countries around the world. So if you're thinking about living internationally, you have to remember your citizenship. Even though I'll use myself as an example, even though I'm Peruvian, I'm also a US citizen, which means that I have to pay taxes as a US citizen. I was born in Peru, but if I make money in Peru, I need to tell the US government. If I have a savings account in Peru, I need to tell the US government because they have a treatment that they tell each other, the banks tell each other. So don't get in trouble with the US government and avoid paying taxes. If you go to another country because you are a US citizen first and foremost, and you have to pay taxes. So you may end up in a country that you have to pay 2 times taxes because you have a rental in the US and you're making money in another country. So make sure that you have the right advisor to give you that. You don't want to owe money to the IRS.
And that's because you said I had to remember fat guy. What was the
FATCA, FATCA.
Oh, that's not what I heard at all.
FATCA.
That guy. Got it. Fat guy.
Slightly different, Doug. Slightly different.
But that will remind you, fat guy will remind you.
It will. It's not perfect, but it's directionally right there. That's a great place, I think, for us to end this discussion. I will link to this because there's actually 6 in total. We covered 4 at stackingbenjamins.com if you want to dive into them more. But love that discussion. I love the tactical tips you all brought. Let's find out what's happening where each of you are. We'll have our guest of honor go last. OG, what's happening to you this fine weekend? What's happening to you? What's happening with you? What are you having done to yourself this weekend?
We are in the middle of building our ark. We are nearly finished. And we need it because pretty soon we'll just float away. So yeah, this weekend is a golf tournament. So maybe.
Supposedly, maybe.
Yes.
I don't
Where
know.
are you, OJ?
Water polo.
I live in Dallas.
Okay.
It's rained a lot here in the last 4 or 5 days.
Because OG likes water too, Elaine. So he's trying to get as much around him in Dallas. Make it less landlocked than it is currently. Paula, what's happening at the Afford Anything podcast?
Oh, on the Afford Anything podcast, we have an interview with a guy by the name of Michael McQueen who talks about mindset. So he talks about how to persuade others and be a more effective communicator. And whether you're trying to convince your spouse to move into index funds instead of mutual funds, or you're trying to convince your kids to save some additional some of the money that they make from their summer jobs. You're trying to convince them to invest some of that, or you're trying to convince your boss to give you a raise or your client to pay you more. He talks about mindset and persuasion. So that's at the Afford Anything podcast.
He's so interesting and so energetic,
Mhm.
and he also has that Australian accent, which doesn't
Yes.
hurt either.
Exactly, exactly. He was Australia's Speaker of the Year, Keynote Speaker of the Year,
Keynote speaker
Keynote
of the
Speaker of
year.
the Year in 2015.
Yeah, just a fabulous guy, Michael McQueen. If you've never heard him, you can hear him on the Afford Anything podcast.
Yes.
Elaine, thanks so much for coming back. We love having you here, and congratulations on everything you've been doing. What's happening with you and your practice?
Well, it's growing, it's thriving. I'm gonna be on TV on Wednesday in Telemundo talking about why women need to save more than men. And I'm writing my 9th book on methodology for women also. And I'm waiting for Miami to cool down because I also love to play golf, but I can't play in 95-degree weather. It's too hot.
Yeah.
I'm jealous that OJ is playing golf.
Well, come to Texas.
Oh, it's still 95.
How do you play at 6 in the morning?
It's just
with a fan.
They're just a little tougher in Texas.
Sweat, so we're okay. Yeah,
without any clothes.
It's a dry heat. It's a dry heat.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it's a humidity that gets you.
I'm gonna wait for the winter to play golf, maybe. But I love golf too. So
a good time. And people can find at ElaineKing.com, right?
Yes, ElaineKing.com.
Awesome. And we'll link to Afford Anything, to ElaineKing.com, and to the wonderful piece that we talked about today on our show notes page. Doug, man, I think you got it from here, brother. What should be our takeaways today?
Darn right I got it from here, Joe. Here's what's stacked up on our to-do list for today. First, take some advice from OG. Stop reminding yourself how much you make and instead tell yourself how much you keep. Second, don't forget the words of Paula Pant. Whatever you're saving right now, your anticipatory goal should be to save 1% more than that next month. Then wash, rinse, and repeat. But the biggest to do, I got to start panning for whatever might be left undiscovered around here. Who knows what I'll find in Joe's mom's jewelry box? Thanks to Elaine King for joining us today. You can find all things Elaine at ElaineKing.com. We'll also include links in our show notes at StackingBenjamins.com. Thanks to Paula Pant for hanging out with us today. You'll find her fabulous podcast, Afford Anything, wherever you're listening to finer podcasts. And finally, thanks also to OG for joining us. Looking for good financial planning help? Head to StackingBenjamins.com/OG for his calendar.
Yay, and we did it. Nice job, everybody. Want to say hi to the people hanging out with us on YouTube. Carlos, thank you. Carlos says, great show, everybody. Annette, by the way, Paula says that Spindrift zip code would have been better for you. Apparently, Annette has a Spindrift 02458.
That awesome. Would have been better. That would have been so much better.
And E. Boone says they are a Waterloo person as well, over Spindrift.
I like how people are focusing on the right things as they're listening to our show.
Right. So much on that. And that also has a good one. I move every 2 to 3 years for work. Each time was a calculated move, Elaine, to your point, and has paid off significantly. So begin with that in mind. So thanks for hanging out with us today, everybody. We'll be back next week with another live recording, but I think next week it's going to be on Tuesday. But check in our Basement Facebook group, and we'll have more on that. So contributors, we're going to say goodbye here to the people on YouTube and hang out with me, contributors, for just a second longer. All right, because I have to end that first, and then now I end this.